Imagine you had a piece of land and you decided to place this pond right here. How do you identify the pond's location? If you were to divide one side into vertical pieces, you can see how the pond is within segment number 2. The number 2 is our first figure in our 2-figure grid reference. If we were to divide the adjacent side into segments, we can further narrow down the location of the pond. The letter B becomes our second figure of our 2-figure grid reference. Now you try. Remember, you start with the x-axis first. What is the 2-figure grid reference? You have 5 seconds. Starting with the x-axis, you have 4, our first figure, then D, our second figure. And that is the 2-figure grid reference. Now let's look at the 4-figure grid reference. It's easy. It's the same as a 2-figure grid reference, only each column is now in double digits. Now we follow the same steps as in the 2-figure grid reference to find what the 4-figure grid reference is of the pond. Starting with the x-axis, we can see that the first 2 digits are 33. Then on the y-axis, we have 42. This gives us our 4-figure grid reference. And just like that, learning the 2-figure grid reference has given us the 4-figure grid reference. Now let's look at the much harder but more accurate 6-figure grid reference. Before we can use a 6-figure grid reference, we need to first make the pond much smaller. Now we find the 4-figure grid reference for the pond. On the X we have 33, on the Y we have 42. Now that we have our 4-figure grid reference, how do we find the missing 2 figures? Well, let's look at the grid a little closer. If we divide it into 100 squares, we can find the missing 2 figures by finding the 2-figure grid reference of the pond within our square. On the x-axis we have 1, and on the y-axis we have 9. Now, to find the 6-figure grid reference, we simply add 4 to 2. And just like that, we have our 6-figure grid reference. Now you try. What is the 6-figure grid reference of the pond? You have 10 seconds. Starting with our 4-figure grid reference, we have 15 on the X, 26 on the Y. The final 2 figures starting with the X, we have 7, then 4 on the Y, giving us our 6-figure grid reference, 157264. Thank you for watching. Please support the channel by subscribing.